So President Trump calling Prime Minister Modi his friend from a long time. In fact, it was Prime Minister Modi's first bilateral with the 47th President of the United States in his third term. This was a meeting of the two world leaders who are expected to play a very critical role in the new world order. It was a display of a lot of camaraderie as well between the two world leaders as the Prime Minister arrived at the White House. In fact, as the Prime Minister arrived, he was gifted a coffee table book by the US President Donald Trump. And this book was titled Our Journey Together and also had an inscription that said, "My Prime Minister, you're great." In fact, it was signed by the US President Donald Trump, and the book also had pictures of both the leaders together and includes the events Howdy Modi and Namaste Trump. This meeting between Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi focused on the several critical issues that concern both the nations as well as the regional stability and also security of the Indo-Pacific. As the duo addressed the media after the meeting, they made it clear that both the nations aspire to hit the $500 billion mark in trade by the year 2030. India and the United States are looking to secure a deal on F-35 stealth jets soon, which could be a big fillip to India's defense sector. The US President also confirmed efforts are on to extradite the 2611 plotter Tahawwur Rana, and both nations will cooperate in their bid to combat terrorism. US President Donald Trump also vowed to impose reciprocal tariff. Here are some of the highlights of what transpired at the big meeting.
जब अमेरिका और भारत साथ मिलकर काम करते हैं, यानी मागा प्लस मीगा, तब बन जाता है मेगा पार्टनरशिप फॉर प्रॉस्पेरिटी। इसरो और नासा के आपसी सहयोग से बनाई निसार सैटेलाइट शीघ्र ही भारतीय लॉन्च व्हीकल पर अंतरिक्ष की उड़ान भरेगी। आज हमने द्विपक्षीय व्यापार को 2030 तक 2 गुना से भी अधिक बढ़ाकर $500 बिलियन तक पहुंचाने का लक्ष्य निर्धारित किया है। अमेरिका और भारत मिलकर के हमारी कोशिश है और हमारी कोशिश रहनी चाहिए कि इस प्रकार की पूरी इकोसिस्टम को हमें जड़ मूल से नष्ट करना चाहिए ताकि ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग बंद हो।
Anywhere in the world, they've been very strong on tariffs, and I don't blame them necessarily, but it's a different way of doing business. It's very hard to sell into India because they have trade barriers, very strong tariffs. We are right now a reciprocal nation. We are going to, if it's India or if it's somebody else with low tariffs, we're going to have the same. We're going to have whatever India charges, we're charging them. Whatever another country charges, we're charging them. So it's called reciprocal, which I think is a very fair. As you said, we're giving a very violent man, it seems to me. I mean, I don't know that he's been convicted yet or will be, but let's assume he's a pretty violent person. We're giving him back to India immediately, and there are more to follow because we have quite a few requests. So we work with India on crime. Starting this year, we'll be increasing military sales to India by many billions of dollars. We're also paving the way to ultimately provide India with the F-35 stealth fighters.
Mr. President, you spoke about Prime Minister Modi as a tough negotiator. Who was a tougher negotiator today, and who has a better negotiating tactic when it comes to tariffs?
Oh, he's a much tougher negotiator than me, and he's a much better negotiator than me. There's not even a contest. Okay?
In fact, one of the biggest breakthroughs in the bilateral meeting with the US President has to be Donald Trump's assurance on extraditing the main 2611 plotter. That's right. Donald Trump claimed that his administration has approved the extradition of Tahawwur, and he called him one of the most evil people in the world. In fact, Tahawwur Rana is currently detained in the United States in a metropolitan detention center in Los Angeles and is known to be associated with the Pakistani-American terrorist David Headley, one of the main conspirators in the attack. In response, the Prime Minister assured that India will cooperate with the United States in fighting terrorism and cross-border terror in specific.
As you said, we're giving a very violent man, it seems to me. I mean, I don't know that he's been convicted yet or will be, but let's assume he's a pretty violent person. We're giving him back to India immediately, and there are more to follow because we have quite a few requests. So we work with India on crime, and we want to make it good for India, and it's very important. So that kind of a relationship is very important to us.
आतंकवाद के खिलाफ लड़ाई में भारत और अमेरिका दृढ़ता से साथ खड़े रहे हैं। हम सहमत हैं कि सीमा पार आतंकवाद के उन्मूलन के लिए ठोस कार्रवाई आवश्यक है और मैं राष्ट्रपति जी का आभारी हूं कि उन्होंने 2008 के जिसने भारत में नरसंहार किया था उस मुजरिम को अब भारत के हवाले करने का निर्णय किया है। भारत की अदालतें उचित कार्यवाही करेंगी।
This is an issue on which the U.S. authorities have taken very clear decisions. I think you've seen the president announce it himself from the White House podium, the decision of the United States to extradite him. It's reflected there in the joint statement as well. We are working on the logistics of this, his surrender and extradition to India. There are a few final steps to be completed. The two sides are in touch on this particular issue.
So remember, India has been asking for the same for several years now. We're a step closer towards justice for the 2611 victims. Let's tell you why this is a very, very significant diplomatic victory for India. Let's tell you the charges that are mentioned in the NIA charge sheet. Conspiracy to wage war to commit murder. These are some of the charges that have been leveled against Tahawwur Rana. He has been mentioned in the NIA charge sheet, going on to say to commit forgery for cheating, to use as a genuine forged documents, in fact, also saying committing a terrorist act. These are some of the charges that have been leveled against him. This is a very, very significant move for India. Remember, this has been one of the biggest demands of India as well for several years now. This is extremely significant, but how long could it take and what were the talks that went behind it? The MEA also saying that we're working on the logistics for the same. Senior Executive Editor Madhav Das Gopalakrishnan gets us a report from Washington, D.C. Take a look.
One of the big wins for India as far as this bilateral visit is concerned is the extradition of Tahawwur Rana, which the US government has formally signed off on. And it's not just the fact that Tahawwur Rana, one of the perpetrators and masterminds of the 2611 attack, will now be facing justice in India, but also the fact that President Trump has decided to consider the other requests from India for extradition, sending out a big message to all the perpetrators of terror against India. What's even more specific is the fact that the entire joint statement has called out Pakistan. It has asked for the perpetrators of 2611 and the Pathankot attack to be brought to justice and has also urged Pakistan to not allow its territory to be used for spreading terror in other jurisdictions.
So let's tell you how he was significant in instilling terror in the country. Let's tell you the findings as per the NIA charge sheet. He provided a blueprint for the 2611 attacks to the Lashkar-e-Toiba. That's the charge against him. Apart from that, he is also accused of helping David Headley open an immigration firm in Mumbai that helped David Headley also carry out several recce's that finally ended in this attack. Apart from that, he's accused of being a double agent Headley. In fact, he did a recce of the targets because of help that came in from Tahawwur Rana. So he played a very crucial role, and he also helped David Headley multiple times in conducting a recce. And he knew of Headley's meetings and what was discussed. So he was a big part of the entire conspiracy. As per the NIA charge sheet, he was in direct knowledge of the Pakistan state's involvement in 2611. So look at the bigger implications that it could have. Mr. Ujjwal Ikam, this is a big moment, and you're somebody who has been closely associated with the entire case as well. And, you know, the entire country is aware of how the country has waited for decades together for this. How significant of a diplomatic victory is this for India?
Indeed, it's a historic moment for two reasons. Before US administration taken any decision after the rejection of Tahawwur Rana's appeal in US Supreme Court, US President Mr. Trump on his own has made an announcement that Tahawwur Rana will be extradited very soon.
Yes.
Now, this development has taken during the visit of our Prime Minister, Mr. Modi ji. Now, I think this gives a strong signal across the world that US land will not be used by such persons who are indulging in terrorist activities on the soil of India. Number one. Number two, US government has taken a tough stand so far as the people who are involved in the terrorist activities. And thirdly, this specific signal given by Mr. Trump clearly shows that the bilateral relationship, so far as the terrorists are concerned and other things are concerned, they will be very smoothly operated. Mr. Trump has used one word, that Mr. Modi is a very tough negotiator. That clearly gives a message that their close friendship and acquaintance with each other. But at the same time, Mr. Trump is very clear in saying, so far as the tariff is concerned, it will be a reciprocal. So I think Mr. Trump is a very outspoken, and I think in today's meeting also, between the Indian Prime Minister, Mr. Modi ji, and Mr. Trump, many new things will be evolved. Because Mr. Trump has also said the list of such persons like Tahawwur Rana is a very long one, and you see it's very difficult to predict at this juncture, but this is giving a strong signal to those countries who are still sheltering such terrorists.
Okay, all right. So, Mr. Ujjwal Nikam, there's no fixed timeline that has been given by the United States. Realistically, when can we expect this to happen? Because India has also mentioned that this is just the beginning. There are other names as well that have been given to the United States. But this is one name that people in the country have been waiting for. It's been a long time waiting.
There is no need to fix a timeline, because you see, once the US administration has taken the decision in principle that they have an approval for the extradition of Tahawwur Rana, because after the order of the Supreme Court, there is no legal scope to Mr. Tahawwur Rana to challenge the said verdict. So US administration has taken the decision, and therefore Mr. Trump has made that announcement. Now it's a only question of about the month, and I'm sure that within a month Tahawwur Rana is likely come back to India.
Okay, all right. So he's likely coming to India soon. Would you also want to speak about why there has been a delay? These efforts have been put in by India for a long time now, for several years now. Was it because of any diplomatic reasons? Was there any resistance that came in from the US side? What led to this delay?
See, there was no resistance because, you see, Tahawwur Rana was already convicted by Chicago court, because David Headley has, by way of the plea bargain agreement, he is undergoing the sentence for 35 years. So far as Tahawwur Rana is concerned, he has already been sentenced by Chicago court. So after the entire sentence which was awarded by Chicago court, Tahawwur Rana was a free man. And therefore, thereafter India started the extradition proceedings. And Tahawwur Rana tried to save himself by requesting the various legal remedies, but ultimately he failed. And the US government has taken a very bold and tough stand against Tahawwur Rana. That is the reason as to how, you see, Tahawwur Rana will be extradited. See, I'm more amused to see that before the US administration officially should take any decision after the verdict of the US Supreme Court, US President yesterday in the night on his own has made this announcement.
Yes.
And that is a good gesture towards India.
Absolutely.
And you see, when our Prime Minister is in the US, he has made a statement that clearly shows that Mr. Trump also wants to have a good relation with India, because now India is a great hub for the US also, and US knows very well for certain that India has a strong potential also.
Yes.
And Mr. Modi ji and Mr. Trump, they had knowing each other, because last time when US President Mr. Trump was on the chair of the president, so they have good equation. That is the reason as to US President, without having any formalities, has made this announcement of the US government.
And
so
it was one of the first announcements that came in from him, isn't it? As soon as the press briefing began, he spoke about it. And it also shows that for India and the United States, counter-terrorism and peace is at the top of the agenda. Well, viewers, it was a tough message from both Prime Minister Modi and the United States President Donald Trump on their vow to combat terror. Pakistan believes that the statement is one-sided and that Pakistan's stance was not considered. Here's a response coming in from the Pakistan Foreign Ministry.
Reference in the Indo-US joint statement of 13 February 2025 as one-sided, misleading, and contrary to diplomatic norms. We are surprised that the reference has been added to the joint statement, notwithstanding Pakistan's counter-terrorism cooperation with the United States. Such references cannot cover up India's sponsorship of terrorism, subversion, and extrajudicial assassinations in the region and beyond, nor can they shift international attention from stark reality of India being a safe haven for the perpetrators of hate crimes against Muslims and other minorities. The joint statement fails to address non-compliance of India with UN Security Council resolutions, which is the key source of tension and instability in the region, and to take cognizance of the grim human rights situation in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Regrettably, this is tantamount to abdication of international responsibility. The international community recognizes Pakistan's efforts and sacrifices in the fight against terrorism.
Senior news editor Bhavtosh Singh joins us on the broadcast. Bhavtosh, message from the United States, and a strong one at that, against terrorism as well as cross-border terror. But clearly tremors in Pakistan. What is Pakistan so rattled about?
Well, the fact is that Pakistan's involvement in 2611 is very clear, and the fact that Tahawwur Rana will be extradited and will face trial in India also shows that 2611 investigation by India clearly proves one thing, that Pakistan was involved. Remember, the charge sheet in this case was filed way back in 2011, and the main accused, the main planners are someone who in fact are involved with the deep state, whether it's Major Samir or whether it is Ilyas Kashmiri. Ilyas Kashmiri was killed in a drone attack in which US forces were involved. He's an Al-Qaeda operative, and then you have individuals like Hafiz Saeed, Zakir Rahman Lakhvi. They were in fact the top brass of Lashkar-e-Toiba, and the fact that there were ISI individuals who were directly in touch with David Headley Coleman. It's not a just one terror attack. It involved international players, and that's what it was. That was what was explained in the charge sheet that was filed against Tahawwur Rana. And India was trying his extradition for past 5 years. India's documents that were submitted in Supreme Court clearly proves one thing, that their investigation has been vindicated. Their entire investigation that has been carried out by Indian Federal Probe Agency has been upheld, and he will in fact face trial in India. The question is when he will be brought here. What we have gathered is that the NIA teams will go to US very soon, and he will be brought here by a private charter plane, and he will be lodged in Tihar jail. The fact that India has assured US that he will face life imprisonment and that he will be soon facing trial in India is one big indication of the trial and investigation that was carried out by Indian authorities. They collected evidence across the globe, and they have in fact proved one thing, that ISI top brass of Pakistani army were directly involved in the planning of 2611.
Okay, all right. So when terror is one-sided, even the statement will seem one-sided for Pakistan. Bhavtosh, thank you for joining us with those details.